The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning to you here at 5 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher.
This morning, many areas across Kern County are under a little bit of water as a surge of moisture pushes through. And due to the heavy rains, county supervisors declared a local state of emergency in response to these storms. Officials say the emergency proclamation will help our local authorities respond to these disasters. Fire officials have been keeping a close eye on Pine Mountain Club, McFarland, and the Kern River Valley. Firefighters say they're still concerned about an area off Calgary Drive in Wofford Heights where there's the potential for landslides. Soil engineers now calling the landslides highly likely, prompting an evacuation order for all of Wofford Heights.
Our soils engineer report came back and stated that this hillside could go at any moment. If it receives any amount of saturation, it could go at any moment. Does that mean tonight? Does that mean tomorrow? Does that mean in 6 months? We're still planning that out. This is a serious situation, and we have all our intel working to solve this problem. When we tell people that it's time to get out, it's time to get out. It keeps our first responders safe, and it's there to keep you safe.
Officials say the precipitation levels we saw in Kern with this last storm haven't been seen in about 60 years. All evacuation orders issued for Kern County remain in effect this morning. Residents of River Kern, low-lying areas of Kernville, Tilly Creek, Wofford Heights, and the Wasco Pond area are all under a lawful order to leave now and seek shelter. There is an evacuation center at Kern Valley High School on Erskine Creek Road in Lake Isabella. The previous evacuation centers at the Lake Isabella Senior Center and the Elks Lodge in Wofford Heights are now closed.
Despite warnings of potentially catastrophic soil movement, some residents of Wofford Heights say they're not concerned after managing the last storm, which saw widespread flooding and significant damage.
It was so much worse a couple days ago that this is just kind of like, I'll get out of here, but I'm going to take my time.
We're still hesitant to leave. Why? Because in my mind, I'm looking at all the dynamics and I'm watching the river. I'm giving myself a point at which I'm going to stay. If it gets beyond that, then I'm leaving. But I should be gone already. But man, it's such a hassle to be evacuated.
County fire crews are reminding residents that flood water and standing water can not only be dangerous, but can make you vulnerable to infectious diseases and chemical hazards. They're urging the community to take the warnings seriously since conditions can change at any moment.
And we're talking about it can change within minutes. And this storm has not only affected the Kern River Valley, but also our neighboring towns north of Bakersfield. McFarland residents were out preparing for another blast of heavy rain yesterday by layering the outside of their homes with sandbags. Some told us if it weren't for the sandbags provided by the city, that water would have gotten inside their home during this storm. Vice Mayor of Delano, Salvador Solorio, says no one has had to use the emergency shelter yet, but stresses there is help available at the 11th Avenue Community Center. Meantime, we have a full list of sandbag locations on our website, kget.com.
And just a reminder, as we continue to deal with these dangerous storms, Kern County Fire says one of the easiest ways to be ready for potential flooding and other disasters is to sign up for alerts from Kern County Emergency Services. Just go to readykern.com. Closing arguments are underway in the murder trial for a deadly 2019 crash. Ronald Pierce Jr. and Israel Maldonado are accused of street racing on Old River Road the night of November 24th, 2019. Prosecutors say Pierce reached speeds of 133 miles per hour before he rear-ended 58-year-old Maria Navarro and sent her minivan into opposite lanes of traffic where it hit a crane truck. Navarro was killed, and 2 children in the vehicle were also seriously hurt. Pierce and Maldonado are both facing charges of second-degree murder.
5:13 is your time now. Let's take you out live to Capitol Hill this morning, where President Biden signed a new executive order yesterday here in Southern California aimed at curbing gun violence, an issue plaguing communities across the country. The president acknowledging these moves are largely symbolic, saying significant changes must come from Congress. NBC's Bree Jackson is in Washington this morning with more.
It
It's been nearly 2 months since a gunman opened fire at a Lunar New Year celebration in California.
Additional units requested, multiple victims, gunshot wounds,
killing 11 people. President Biden honored those victims Tuesday and unveiled his latest effort to keep Americans safe.
They'll accelerate and intensify this work to save more lives more quickly.
The president signed an executive order. It directs the Attorney General to move the U.S. as close to universal background checks as possible without additional legislation. It also ramps up efforts to hold the gun industry accountable.
It does that by calling out for an independent government study that analyzes and exposes how gun manufacturers aggressively market firearms to civilians, especially minors.
Gun safety advocates praise the president's actions while stressing there's still more work to do.
Is this as much as I would like to see? No, but this is a lot more than any previous president has done on this issue, especially, with a divided Congress.
Republicans argue legislation won't solve the problem and point to gun violence in California, a state with some of the strictest gun laws in the country.
What he calls universal background checks wouldn't have stopped a mass public shooting in this century.
According to the Gun Violence Archives, there have been 110 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year. The president says it's time Congress take action to stop gun violence. President Biden is again demanding an assault weapons ban, but given a divided Congress, passing gun legislation certainly faces an uphill battle. In Washington, Bree Jackson, NBC News.
Fallout continues this morning after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. We're now learning of multiple investigations into actions taken by executives within the company. NBC News confirming the Department of Justice, along with the Securities and Exchange Commission, have launched probes looking at, among other things, stock sales made by company executives before the bank collapsed. This as calls grow in Washington for renewed bank regulation and accountability.
I do think that certainly the profits from the sales by the owner should be clawed back because we're going to have to be raising fees on banks in order to pay for the uninsured depositors at this bank and other banks.
Just before its collapse, Silicon Valley Bank blamed its troubles on elevated cash burn from its mostly tech-focused clients. Now the concern is, in part, whether other regional banks are exposed to similar risk. The pullback in the tech sector continued yesterday with Facebook parent company Meta's announcement it would eliminate 15,000 jobs following 11,000 layoffs at the company just last November.
Bakersfield Congressman and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy weighing in last night on the fallout from that bank collapse. We caught up with him as he was heading into the Lincoln Day dinner at the Marriott Hotel.
Well, the real challenge we've had in this banking system is really from the Biden and the Democrats. Their runaway spending brought us inflation, and when you raise interest rates and you lock in bonds, they lose money. So all the banks have some challenges here. But it tells you, and the real lesson you have to learn from that, we need to get control over our spending. We're at $31 trillion in debt. We haven't been at debt to GDP like this since World War II.
We'll have more on McCarthy's response later today on 17 News at 5.
World news now, and a dangerous aerial encounter yesterday in the sky between the United States and Russia. The Pentagon saying a Russian fighter jet poured fuel on an unmanned American drone and then collided with it.
The impact sending the American aircraft into the Black Sea. NBC's Courtney Kuby has more.
The stunning showdown happening over the Black Sea near Ukraine and Russia when an unmanned American drone like this one, called a Reaper, was confronted by two Russian fighter jets, weaving dangerously close to it, dumping fuel on the U.S. drone and then colliding with it, the Russian jet's wing striking the Reaper's propeller. After the collision, the U.S. downed the $32 million drone in the Black Sea, first blacking out its software to keep classified information out of Russian hands, the Pentagon describing the Russian actions as reckless.
Based on the actions of the Russian pilots, it's clear that it was unsafe, unprofessional. And I think the actions speak for themselves.
The Pentagon says the drone was conducting a routine intelligence gathering mission in international airspace when the intercept occurred.
It was over international airspace, over international water.
The Russians disagreed, insisting the U.S. drone was in their established airspace near Crimea and that the Russian jet did not come into contact with the drone.
Mr. Ambassador, any comment on the
The U.S. summoning the Russian ambassador to object to the Russian pilot's actions. The U.S. is working through options to recover the drone, but without U.S. ships in the Black Sea, the reality is the Russians can reach the wreckage before the U.S. can.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.